The bills were new enough to rasp against my fingertips. $10,000 cinched with a rubber band lay neat in an unmarked envelope on my kitchen table. My son stood where I taught him to flip pancakes 3 decades ago and said very softly, "That's your share, Mom. Then you pack. Then you rest." Ryan had his father's height and none of his warmth. He didn't sit. He adjusted the narrow knot of a silk tie that didn't belong in my kitchen and watched me count twice as if patience were charity. 10,000, I said, setting the money beside a ring-shaped water stain I'd never been able to scrub out of the oak. For Calder Ridge, 180 acres of creek-fed grass, 2 barns full herd, and the Firebird Daniel gave me when we'd made it 25 years without quitting on each other. I tapped the envelope once. All that goes for 10,000, he exhaled through his nose the way men do when they've practiced being reasonable in mirrors. The paperwork's already with Cedar Vista Communities. The survey's done. They break ground next month. I've set up a suite for you at Oak Ridge Haven. It's close to town, there's a nurse on every floor, and the activities calendar. When did I sign anything over to you? I asked. Ryan glanced at his watch and back at me. After your pneumonia last winter, we talked about how complicated things were getting. You told me to take the stress off your plate. That must have been quite a conversation, I said. I don't remember any of it. He straightened, moving from gentle to managerial. Mom, we agreed. It's not safe for you to be here alone anymore. You can't keep up this place by yourself. This is the best outcome. I poured coffee that had been ready before he knocked and did not offer him a cup. Through the window, the back pasture lifted and fell in green waves. A red-tailed hawk kited over the live oaks. The day had that particular brightness hill country mornings get when the air remembers spring. You also negotiated away the Firebird, I asked. Or did that one sell itself? The buyer's driving up from Dallas tomorrow, he said. You'll get top dollar, $72,500. It's already included in the settlement calculations. And my cut, I said, flicking the corner of the envelope, is a gracious round number. His patience thinned. You're getting care. You'll never have to worry about bills again. How much did Cedar Vista pay you? I asked. For land you don't own. Color rose along his collar. This, he began. 2-3 million, I said mildly. It's a pretty slope of ground, and developers love a slope they can name. The mask came down hard. The son who'd used to track deer prints in the creek sand with Daniel was gone, and the man who closed deals stood in his place. I don't have to give you anything, Maeve. The title is mine. It has been for months. Thursday morning we're moving you to Oak Ridge. Pack personal items. They provide furniture. He used my first name on purpose, a little cruelty wrapped in syllables. I set the mug down and rested both hands on either side of it so I wouldn't do anything except breathe. I didn't sign a transfer, I said. Not last winter. Not ever. And I didn't agree to sell a car that still has my name on the registration. He smoothed his tie a second time. We've gone over this, he said, dropping his voice into the careful cadence people use with the unwell. You forget things. That's normal. That's why I've handled the messy parts. I looked at the man who had been the boy I drove to speech meets in a faded blue pickup, the man who had become a stranger wearing my son's face. I grade papers in red pen, Ryan, I said. 40 years of teenagers never beat the details out of me. If something had my signature on it, I'd know. He let the silence sit like a coin between us, waiting to see if I'd pick it up. When I didn't, he checked his watch again. I've got a call in 20 minutes, he said. I'll come back Saturday to start boxing the kitchen. Oak Ridge doesn't allow gas stoves, too risky, so you won't need the cast iron. Keep the photo albums. They can go in the little dresser they provide. He turned for the door. Ryan, I said. He stopped. You've noticed I stopped arguing with you a week ago, I said. Does that not worry you at all? He half smiled, the kind of smile men wear when they've reached the end of their patience and are being very good anyway. It means you finally trust me to do the right thing. It means I learned when to save my breath, I said. That's all. Outside his black sedan idled heat shimmer lifting off the hood. He didn't take the envelope. He told me to call if I needed help measuring for curtains at the new place. The screen door eased shut behind him, the spring squealing like a small animal. I stayed at the table until the engine sound fell away down the Kalish road. The house listened with me. Daniel's chair creaked when the air conditioner kicked on how it had creaked for 30 years and then stilled. I turned my wedding ring once. After Daniel died, I kept the ring because absence is easier to carry when it has weight. I lifted the receiver on the landline I never got around to canceling and pressed a number I didn't have to look up. Nora, I said when my friend picked up, it's Maeve, we should go ahead. She didn't say I told you so. I'm 10 minutes out, she said. Do you want me to pick up kolaches? Bring napkins, I said and hung up. I washed the cups before she arrived because work is a way to put your hands where they can't shake. Then I went out to the porch and stood at the rail. The creek made its small music under the sycamores. A windmill knocked a little somewhere east. The ridge had gotten this name because Daniel said you could see rain coming before it believed it was coming. The The clouds line up to the west and march in like men who've learned discipline. If you live long enough on a piece of land, you start counting your life by its chores. Fences we braced with cedar posts. A full-born breach but mean to live. The year the creek ran dry and the year it ran out of its banks. You keep it all, you don't sell it with papers. The signs had started innocuous. A glossy brochure for Oak Ridge Haven where you can finally relax, tucked under my newspaper after Ryan's visits. Parlor questions couched as concern. What if you fell? What if the truck didn't start, as if I hadn't figured out how to solve both problems in 1979? I'll hire help. I'd said, you won't. He'd replied as if that was settled. 3 Tuesdays back, my neighbor June Ortega called before breakfast. You got company, she said. 3 men with rolled-up blueprints and shoes that'll ruin in mud. They're walking your north fence with one of those one-eyed camera sticks. Tripod, I said. That, she said. You want me to make a scene? Not today, I said. Thank you, June. That was the pebble that starts the slide. I made 2 calls that morning. The first to Nora Kemp, who has a mind like a file cabinet and knows which drawer to pull without looking. The second to Hector Shaw, who used to be the kind of deputy you wanted at your back when trouble came without a warrant. I asked Claudette at the bank to put coffee on and open the file, with our ranch notes in it, the one that still smells faintly of Daniel's aftershave from that time he'd leaned over the counter laughing and left his scent in paper. By lunch, we were at Nora's conference table, a rectangle of polished mesquite Daniel would have admired for its clean lines. Nora slid a legal pad toward me. Before we start, she said, tell me what you want to keep, no matter the cost. The land, I said, in the shape it's in. The house. The blue car, she asked, and a small smile touched the corner of her mouth. Because she remembers every birthday party, Daniel surprised me with something loud, and the loudest had been that car the year our hair went silver. The Firebird. I said, stays with me while I'm living. Hector laid down a manila folder. He'd already pulled the public records, whatever Ryan had filed, and whatever he'd only planned to. You were right to call, he said. He's moving fast. Claudette folded her hands. I can flag anything unusual that tries to move through your accounts, she said. But the bigger issue is title. Nora nodded. We protect the land first, she said. Then we take the oxygen out of any timeline that isn't yours. I am an old woman who has taught 1,000 teenagers what a clause is and why commas matter. There is comfort in rules and forms in ink. Nora spoke the language of deeds and easements, and I listened the way I listened to rain hitting the porch roof, counting, measuring, feeling where the leaks might be. We worked until the sun slid west and the shadows started naming things. Hector left to talk to a man at the county clerk's office who still owed him a favor for a winter night in '98, when Hector had carried a drunk out of a ditch and into a better way to live. Claudette phoned through lunch and into afternoon, making sure anything Ryan thought was convenient would become at minimum delayed. At 4, Nora pushed back from the table. I'll file, she said. You go home. I am home, I said. You know what I mean, she said. I drove the short mile back down Calder Ridge Road with the windows open. The creek smell and the sun-warmed grass came into the cab like a benediction. I parked where I always park and walked through my kitchen door and set the envelope exactly where it had been all day. A little ridiculous monument to the cost a man will put on his mother's life when he is tired of its complications. The phone buzzed at 6:18. I don't like the way the tiny bell on a cell phone sounds in my house. It has the tone of someone trying to sell you something. Hector's message was brief. All documents confirmed, stamped and recorded. Clerk will release index in the morning. I read it twice and then once more slow, the way you read a verdict even when you already know the outcome. The house breathed with me. The windmill clicked once and steadied. Somewhere down the creek, a bullfrog started its evening sermon and was answered by another. I poured the last of the coffee, now gone to bitterness, and drank it anyway. The money stayed on the table, the land stayed where it was. I rinsed the cup, set it to dry, and turned out the kitchen light. The clerk's index posted at 9:03 a.m. the next morning. Hector sent a photo of the stamp, the case number, and a one-line note, done. I copied the image down into a spiral notebook because ink quiets my mind, then put the phone face down and rolled biscuit dough while the house warmed with late light. By noon, a trail of dust lifted on Calder Ridge Road. Old Shock's older muffler. My granddaughter leaned on the horn like she'd been born to it and swung her faded green Jeep into the yard beside my truck. Maya had Daniel's rangy build and a way of seeing the world that didn't let it lie to her for long. Her hair was the color of wheat in July. She wore boots older than she was and a college sweatshirt with the sleeves hacked off with a pocket knife. She hit the porch steps 2 at a time. Grandma, she said into my shoulder, you smell like butter. Because there's butter, I said. And because you always arrive at lunchtime as if the angels send you a text. She grinned and then looked past me, the way a person does when trying to read a house. The envelope still sat on the table. The money hadn't learned manners overnight. Is he doing it again? She asked softer. He made a generous offer, I said. $10,000 in a furnished room with crafts. Maya's eyes went hard the way Daniel's used to when a storm came mean. She didn't cuss, though she knows how. What do you need from me? Eat something, I said, then listen. We ate at the kitchen table like we were running a drill. Biscuits, honey-sliced peaches, coffee. When the plates were respectable, I told her what I knew and what I suspected and what the county had recorded that morning. So it's real, she said at last, staring at the index number Hector had texted. Not just talk. Real, I said, and precise. Maya traced the heading with a fingernail. Conservation easement, she read. Against development, against subdivision, perpetual. She looked up. You're locking it as what it is. It has been what it is, longer than we've been who we are, I said. And a lock is a kindness when temptation is strong. She glanced at the envelope again. He'll be furious. Likely, I said. He may also be frightened. People make different kinds of mistakes in different kinds of weather. Maya finished her coffee and set the cup down like a promise. If he comes here today, do you want me to stay out of sight? You're not a secret, I said. But anger and surprise like to dance together. I'd rather not give them music. She nodded. Then I'll take the south fence check, she said. I can be back in 20 minutes if you call. Keep your phone where the sun can find it, I said. She kissed the top of my head, snagged a cinnamon roll for the road, and was gone in a clatter of screen door and young boots. While she walked fence line, I made a call from the porch where the wind learns your name. Eddie, I said when the man picked up. It's Maeve. Is that shed of yours still as uninteresting as it ever was? More, he said. I added a padlock no one would bother to break because it looks borrowed. I need to store something, I said. From the way he took his time, you'd think we were discussing rainfall. How big? 18 feet long, I said. Bright red. Makes grown men say Lord under their breath. You're finally ready to let me win a drag race, he said. I'm ready to make sure a man who isn't you doesn't show up and take it, I said. Eddie whistled once. You want the back bay, he said. I'll dust off the old drop cloths. I called Hector next. We're moving the car, I said. I'll follow at a distance, he said. And I'll call when the Dallas buyer is on the county road. He wired a deposit yesterday, $18,000, and a series of texts with too many exclamation points. Thank you, I said. Maeve, he said. Leave your phone on the seat face up. If you go through the pecan bottom reception's better by the old ferry turnoff. When have I not done as I'm told, I said. He laughed once and hung up. The Firebird lived under a tarp at the back of the machinery bay, not because I was trying to be dramatic, but because dust loves red, like birds love wind. I pulled the cover, folded it twice, and laid a palm on the hood. Metal holds temperature the way memory holds touch. I found the keys where I always keep them and turned the engine. The sound reached something under my ribs and shook loose 100 Sundays with Daniel. I drove the long way through the pecans where the road narrows to a suggestion out past the dry ford that still remembers the days when it took a mule with opinions to cross. Eddie's shed sat behind his feed store, a square of corrugated tin with a sign that read, "No public restrooms," in letters big enough to qualify as decoration. He waved me in, shut the doors, and looped the chain through the lock like a man tying a bow on a secret. You're a saint, I said. I'm a retailer, he said. But I'm fond of you, so I'll upgrade for the afternoon. When I stepped out into the brightness, Hector's sedan idled 2 blocks down under a chinaberry tree. He lifted a hand once, then went back to performing invisibility. Back home, I left the garage bay open and an oil pan where it always sits, so the empty space wouldn't look like a trick. I swept the floor to make the lie cleaner. Then I put on a pot of coffee and waited. Waiting is just work where the work is breathing. The call came at 12:41. I let it go 2 rings so I wouldn't sound eager. Maeve called her. Where is it? Ryan said without introduction. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation wearing a question suit. Good afternoon to you too, I said. It's hot. Remember to drink water. Don't, he said. The man is standing in your drive with a bank wire receipt for $18,000. Where is the Firebird? Wherever it likes to be, I said. Where it isn't is sold. You're being childish, he said. I'm being the registered owner, I said. You authorized me. I did not, I said. There was a pause long enough for a man to decide whether to lie in a different way or double down on the original. You're making this harder than it needs to be, he said, choosing both. This buyer is a friend of a friend. We worked hard to accommodate his schedule. He's driven 3 hours. You're embarrassing me. I teach English, I said. Embarrassment has been domesticated in my presence. Silence again. Then that voice, the one they teach in business school for talking to obstinate obstacles. We'll discuss this in person, he said. Now. I'm on the porch, I said. He hung up. Maya had come back in time to hear only my side. She didn't ask questions I hadn't answered yet. You want me here or out of sight, she asked. In the kitchen, I said. Door cracked. He arrived in under an hour, the black sedan throwing dust and indignation. He didn't slam the car door. He made a point of not slamming it. He took the steps to the porch like someone had set them to a metronome. He didn't sit. You moved it, he said. Moved what I said because there is a logic to precision, and I would not allow his pronouns to colonize my nouns. The car, he said. The buyer is furious. Do you know what a breach of contract looks like in a courtroom? Do you know what theft looks like in a courtroom, I asked. He stared at me as if I'd started speaking Dutch. Mom. No, I said, not today. His lips flattened a man folding patience into a smaller square. You've been misled, he said. You think a few phone calls and a trip to the clerk's office changes the fact that this property is bound by a conservation easement recorded at 9:03 a.m., I said, perpetual, enforceable. He blinked like a person stepping from bright sun into shade. The movement cost him something. You can't do that, he said, and sounded for a breath's span like the boy on the creek bank, realizing fish don't always bite. I did, I said. His throat worked. He looked out over the pasture as if empty space could offer instruction. When he spoke again, his voice had lost the polished edges. Do you have any idea what you've jeopardized? I have timelines, investors' deposits. Return them, I said. Do you want me ruined? He said quietly. Do you want me gone? I asked, just as quiet. We stood with the hot wind volunteering to be audience. He rubbed his jaw and looked down at the paint that should have been touched up 2 summers ago. The thing you only notice when you're actively choosing not to notice the bigger thing. What will it take, he said at last, to keep you from calling the sheriff? 3 things, I said. He straightened as if preparing to catch something heavy. Name them. First, I said you will return any money that doesn't belong to you. Deposits, advances, convenience fees. Someone convinced you were normal. All of it. His eyes flicked. That will hurt. It won't kill you, I said. Second, I said you will sign a notarized statement acknowledging that Calder Ridge and everything on it, house, barns, tools, and yes, the red car belonged to me. You will state that any documents to the contrary were created without my knowledge or consent. He stared over my shoulder at the kitchen window, which probably showed him his own reflection. You want me to humiliate myself on paper. I want the truth preserved, I said. Paper keeps promises better than speeches. And third, family counseling, I said. With me. With Maya, if she will. Not because I believe talking fixes what forms break, but because silence is slow poison. He laughed, a short sound like a bark. Therapy, he said. You're going to put my business life in an ash can and then make me talk about my feelings. I'm going to protect what I love, I said. What you do after that is not my profession. He put both hands on the porch rail as if bracing against weather. The wind moved his tie and then left it alone. If I refuse, then tomorrow morning I will walk into Sheriff Kincaid's office with Hector Shaw, I said. We will sit down, we will tell the truth, and we will respect whatever the truth asks next. He closed his eyes. When he opened them, he looked older and less certain, and something in my chest did a thing close to breaking and didn't. I need time, he said. You have until 9 tonight, I said. If I haven't heard from you by then, I'll assume you've chosen law over conversation. He let go of the rail and stepped back. You've always been better at chess than checkers, he said. Chess is slow, I said, and I had good teachers. He went down the steps and across the yard. At his car, he paused and turned once a man caught between an exit and a realization he couldn't carry anything with him. Then he left. Maya came out to the porch with the soft care of a daughter in a house that got loud. I heard enough, she said. You heard the essential, I said. Do you want iced tea? She asked. I'd like the sound of ice in a glass, I said. We sat with sweating tumblers while the day eased its shoulders. The creek kept being a creek. A pair of quail startled from the hibiscus and ran low like secrets with legs. At 9:17 p.m. he called. I let it ring once and answered before the second, because punishment is a habit I have not cultivated. Maeve. I'll do it, he said. No preface, all 3. We'll meet at Nora's, I said. 10 in the morning. Bring your driver's license. I'm not a child, he said reflexively. Noted, I said. Bring it anyway. He hung up. I set the phone on the table and watched the numbers go from cold light to black. Maya slid a plate across the table, half a peach, a spoon. Nothing that asked anything of my mouth except to enjoy. Will he show, she asked. He will, I said. Nora's office smelled faintly of lemon oil and ink. Her receptionist offered coffee better than most courtrooms. At 9:59, Ryan walked in, looking like a man who hadn't slept with any peace. He nodded at me, looked away from Maya, and sat where Nora indicated. Nora slid a document across the mesquite and uncapped a pen with the air of a woman whose instruments are honest. I've drafted what your mother requested, Nora said. I'll read it aloud. You may follow or not as you like. He followed because he is the sort of person who wants to see words as they pass him. The statement was simple. It did not wound unnecessarily. It did not flatter. It named my name, the property description, the car by make, model, and color. It stated plainly that any attempts to transfer title had occurred without my authorization, and that all proceeds or deposits taken in expectation of a sale would be returned by him as the party who had arranged them. When Nora finished, she held the pen out. He didn't take it immediately. If this ever sees daylight, he said, not looking at me, I'm finished. It doesn't have to see anything but the inside of a safe, Nora said. Assuming everyone behaves, he took the pen. His signature, normally the kind of slash that tells a server you mean business when you pay a bill, came out smaller, not shaky, just human. Nora notarized. She slid a second sheet forward. Counseling consent, she said. 2 signatures, yours and your mother's. He signed that too. Then a third, an instruction to his bank authorizing the return of the Dallas buyer's deposit and any related fees. Claudette, who had taken her lunch early to be here, leaned forward to witness and to confirm, routing numbers with the unhurried confidence of a woman who has sent a lot of money to the places it needed to go. That takes care of the car, Nora said. You'll call Cedar Vista's counsel next. I've drafted suggested language. Use it or don't, but don't improvise. Improvisation is for jazz and broken plumbing. Ryan huffed something that tried to be a laugh and didn't agree to be one. He stood. Is that all, he asked? For today, Nora said. He glanced at me then, quick as if the looking hurt. You win, he said. This isn't a game, I said. He left with the papers that were his responsibility, and without the boy he had been when he walked creeks with Daniel. The door clicked shut like a sentence ending. Maya touched my elbow. Do you want to drive home, she asked, or do you want me to? I can, I said, but you can too. She took the keys and we walked out into a morning bright enough to make you squint. On the way back, we stopped at Eddie's feed store. He held the back bay door while I slid under the wheel and turned the Firebird over. The sound filled the tin building and ate its echoes. Eddie saluted with 2 fingers and said, Be noisy on purpose, Maeve. It suits you. At the ranch, I parked the Firebird where it belongs and threw the tarp the way you throw a blanket over someone you love who fell asleep after a long day. The black sedan did not return that afternoon. The house found its ordinary again, which is to say, it kept breathing and expected us to, too. I shelled peas at the table where the envelope had sat and let the news in my head find the drawers it needed. When the sun went down, the wind picked up out of the west and brought the smell of cut hay. I sat on the porch and watched the first star. The screen door creaked when Maya came out with 2 cups of peppermint tea. We drank without saying much. The porch boards knew our weight the way old friends know your footsteps, and the night took us in without condition. 3 weeks is long enough for habits to sort themselves. The ranch woke at its usual hour, water troughs filmed and filled the windmill ticking like a clock that measures patience instead of seconds. My phone, which used to be a stubborn thing I ignored until it quit buzzing, turned into a ledger for other people's obligations. Wire confirmations from Claudette, scanned receipts with bank stamps crisp in the corners, a polite email from Cedar Vista's counsel acknowledging notice of the easement and pausing all activity pending internal review. Ryan's messages were clean and spare. Proof of deposits returned a short line confirming the notarized statement now lived in Nora's safe. A reply, accepting the next therapy appointment with a time and a period and nothing else. On a hot Thursday, June, Ortega rattled up my drive with her window down and gossiped like a gift. Saw a sign on West Hawthorne this morning, she said, bracing her elbow on the sill. Your boy's place, for sale. Price to move, the agent said, which means price to bleed. I thanked her and handed over a jar of peach preserves, because currency should taste like something. After she left, I walked the north pasture and counted fenced staples work that looks like nothing until a line holds under stress. When I came back through the yard, the house had the hush of a room that has learned how to keep counsel. Maya arrived in the afternoon with a coil of baling twine around her wrist, like a bracelet, and the face of a girl who has decided not to be surprised by much. I heard about the listing, she said, dropping her backpack by the door. Tina's aunt works that neighborhood. Said the photos went up with empty rooms and a note about quick possession. Then it's honest, at least, I said. She filled 2 glasses with water and handed me one. You still going tomorrow, she asked. Yes, I said, at 11. The therapist's office took up the first floor of a pale yellow bungalow 1 town over. A crepe myrtle shouldered the porch and shed small defiant blossoms on the steps. The brass plaque read, Abigail Winters, Ph.D. in unassuming letters. Inside, cool air and a clean scent, lemons or something that wanted to be lemon, settled the way an usher settles a crowd. There were chairs arranged so a person could talk without feeling watched, and a box of tissues that had the decency not to pretend it wasn't there. Dr. Winters was tall and plain in the soothing way of good doctors, a linen dress and shoes that wouldn't pinch. She shook my hand, then Maya's, then Ryan's when he came in, and nodded in a way that placed us not like pieces on a board, but like people who had all walked a distance to be in the same room. Thank you for coming, she said, and her voice was neither soft nor stern, only even. Before we begin, I'd like to offer a few agreements. We speak to be understood, not to win. No interruptions. If we need to pause, we pause. I have a bell if we forget, and we can pretend it's the cat. Does anyone have questions about that? No one did. She looked to me. Ms. Calder, would you tell me why you're here today? I took air in carefully the way you do when you know your lungs will give it back. I want the truth put in order, I said. Not the paperwork kind that's already filed, but the kind that keeps people from getting lost. I need to understand how my son came to believe he could decide my life for me without asking. Dr. Winters nodded as if that sounded like work that could be done. She turned to Maya. And you? Maya's hands were clumped in her lap. I want my dad to stop pretending problems are just deals in different clothes, she said. And I want to look at him without my stomach trying to take cover. Dr. Winters' eyes warmed, then went back to level. Mr. Hart, she said, using Ryan's name the way a judge uses a docket number correctly without drama. Why are you here? Because I agreed to be, he said. It wasn't defensive so much as drained. There are papers. I signed them. This is part of the papers. She waited. The silence felt like a held door, not a trap. He shifted. I want to get through this, he said finally. I don't have a better sentence. That's a sentence, Dr. Winters said. It counts. She folded her hands. We'll start with a simple frame. Each of you lived the same years, but not the same life. Let's place 2 maps on the table and see where the rivers line up. Ms. Calder, talk to me about the ranch as you know it. I told her the version that fits in a room. Creek-fed grass, the way the light slides across a ridge. You've learned well enough to count by it the work that taught Daniel and me how to stand next to each other without hollering. It demanded I said, but it gave back. We built a memory out of chores. She nodded. Mr. Hart, she said. He stared at the carpet for a long moment as if it might offer a better word than the one he had. It felt like a rival, he said. Like the thing you loved more than anything else, and I happened to be near it. Maya flinched barely. Dr. Winters lifted a finger not to shush, only to mark the air. Tell us what that looked like, she said. Weekends, he said. Friends going to the lake and I'm hauling posts. Missing school trips because a gate broke. Vacations after the calves that never came because something always goes wrong when the earth has a vote. Dad falling asleep in his chair at 8 because Dawn comes at 5, and Mom grading papers with her boots on because there was no other time. Every story starts with how the creek ran or didn't run. If the ranch was a person, it sat at the head of the table and carved the meat. I held my hand still. Words can bruise on the way out. They can bruise on the way in, too. We tried to give you a seat, I said, to make the table big enough. I know, he said, and it broke the smoothness of his voice. He swallowed. It's not about whether you meant to. It's about the fact that I wasn't big enough to compete, so I told myself I didn't want it. Then I told myself I'd prove it didn't matter. So you tried to sell it, Maya said. Her tone wasn't sharp, it wasn't dull. It was a blade that has done its cutting and gone quiet. He didn't look at her. I was drowning, he said to the floor. 3 projects dead in a row. Investors I'd promised would see milestones. Payroll? Men who work for me, who pay for kids' braces and groceries. Cedar Vista shows up with a timeline and a number, and the part of my brain that still listens to the boy I was says, stick it to the land before it sticks it to you. Dr. Winters let the words sit exactly as long as they needed. What did you hope would happen, she asked, once the papers were signed. He let out air that wasn't a laugh. Peace, he said, or at least quiet. I thought money is quiet. I forgot what it asks for in return. The bell never made a sound because no one reached for it. The hour filled, and then the next held by a woman who knew where to put her voice, so it wouldn't crowd out anybody else's. I said things aloud I had only said to the porch light about Daniel's hands when he was young, and the way grief rearranges your furniture so you stub the same shin on a new corner for a year. Maya spoke about the way love can feel like a job and a shelter at the same time. Ryan kept reaching for sentences and finding ones that didn't make him sound like someone else's villain, and it turned out he knew the difference. When we stood in the heat of the parking lot, the bungalows on either side of Dr. Winters' place throwing small rectangles of shade like mercy you have to aim for. Ryan leaned against his car as if it weren't built for leaning. He stared at the pavement. I've listed the house, he said without any wind-up. You already know that. I do, I said. I don't have anywhere lined up, he said. The admission wasn't a ploy. It cost him and didn't earn him anything. Maya shifted, then stilled. The West Boundary cottage is empty, I said. Ramos's place. 2 rooms, a bad roof in the far corner, and a porch that catches the breeze better than the main house on hot nights. He lifted his head like a man who heard his old name called in a crowd. You're offering me a place on the ranch, he said. Not disbelief. Measurement. I'm offering you a roof that doesn't leak as much as it used to, I said. Temporary. No rent for 3 months. We'll see after that. You can talk to Mr. Avery about the roof. He knows the peculiarities of that pitch. If you take it, you contribute the way anybody living here contributes. Not reliving your childhood, just not living like a guest. He stared past me at the line of oaks that marks where the creek bends. His hands opened and closed on the top of the car door. Why, he said, not like a challenge. Because you're my son, I said. Because the cottage is empty. Because it's easier to carry a load when the handles are within reach. He huffed air that wanted to be something else. You make kindness sound like instructions, he said. It's how I know to do it, I said. He He pushed himself off the car. I should be embarrassed to accept, he said. I find that I'm not proud enough for embarrassment at this exact moment. He glanced at Maya and managed to meet her eyes for a heartbeat. If it's all right with you. It's not my cottage, she said, but I'll know where to find you if you break a promise. A corner of his mouth tried on a shape it hadn't made in a while. Fair enough. We set a time today, not tomorrow, because the word later spoils quickly in July, and crossed the street to our separate vehicles. He drove off, first careful at the stop sign, precise in the turn. The brake light flashed once and went dark. I stood until the heat pushed me toward my truck and the crepe myrtle dropped a last blossom on the step behind me, like a handkerchief left on purpose. He arrived before the heat, set its jaw a black sedan full of banker's boxes and shirts still on the dry cleaner's wire. The West Boundary cottage opened with a stiff sound dust, lifting from the floorboards as if it had kept watch and was tired of the job. Ryan stood in the doorway a long beat, then stepped inside and tested the kitchen faucet. The window latches, the light over the sink that flickered once and decided to behave. Roof's worse than I remembered, he said, tipping his chin toward the stain in the far corner. Mr. Avery knows the pitch, I said. He carries the right ladder. He set a box on the counter and ran a thumb along the worn maple edge, like a man reading a line aloud. I put a clean set of sheets on the bed and left a key on the table with a tag that still read Ramos in Daniel's blocky print. On the porch, the wind found the one spot where it always funnels and set the screen to humming. Trash goes out Thursdays, I said. Gate gets chained when you come in after dark. Chickens ignore fences. You'll learn which ones to watch. Got it, he said, and I believed him because repetition had trained him more thoroughly than love ever did. He moved with the economy of someone who's packed his life down to what can be lifted alone. A coffee mug wrapped in newsprint. A photo of Maya at 15 holding a roan with the two big confidence teenagers borrow from horses. A hammer with initials burned into the handle from a camp where boys learn to square things by measuring twice. He hung the shirt, stowed the tools, stacked the boxes that couldn't be faced yet, and stood a while on the back step with his hands on the railing and the pasture running away from him in green. The new arrangement found its rhythm without negotiation. He left early for interviews and came back with sweat dark on his collar, not talking much. On Saturdays, he pulled brush from the fence line and set it to cure. On Sundays, he hitched the squeaky cart to my old lawn tractor and hauled limb piles to the burn ring, as if friction itself could be tidied. He fixed the hinge on the main barn door I'd been meaning to replace, then left a note on the kitchen table that said, "Hinge had one more trick." I talked it out of it. I put eggs on his step the next morning. He returned the plastic carton with a polite penciled thank you that looked like a word he hadn't written in a long time. Counseling continued because we had agreed it would. Tuesdays smelled like lemon oil, and the crepe myrtle kept dropping confetti without asking our approval. Words softened without dissolving. Sometimes we sat afterward in the cottage shade and let cicadas do the talking. If he looked at the creek a certain way, his jaw stopped grinding. July came down like a lid. By noon, the wind forgot its name, and the cottonwoods stood with their leaves turned, showing pale undersides, as if asking for mercy. I had a list for the south pasture float valves, salt block a corner post I suspected was leaning out of principle, and took the ranch truck because habit is a harness that still fits. The engine knocked twice and then a third time with more opinion. I nursed it through the low ground and aimed for the two-track that climbs gentle toward the water lot. Halfway there, the motor coughed, shuddered, and died, as neatly as blowing out a candle. The sun knelt on the roof like a hand. I checked my phone and got a cheerful absence of bars. The nearest shade lived under a live oak 100 yards off. The nearest help was farther than that. I carry water because I was taught to, but the bottle had been generous already and had very little left to give. I shut the truck door to keep what cool was inside from abandoning it and stepped into the white of the afternoon. Heat makes distance misbehave. The oak kept drifting backward and the ground pitched underfoot like it wanted to change the subject. At 20 steps, I felt fine. At 40, I counted them to stay honest. At 60, the world narrowed until the horizon was a ribbon and the middle distance gave up its edges. I took a knee and told myself to get back up before my body made the decision for me. I don't know whether it was the hat that gave me away Daniel's old straw with the sweat-stained band, or the way the air looks when it's doing harm. I heard gravel adore boots taking ground in a hurry. Then Ryan's shadow fell over me and the heat lost a degree. "Hey," he said low and even as if calling a spooked horse back to itself. "I've got you." He tipped water slow against my lower lip, the way you do with a calf that isn't sure about the bottle. He wadded his shirt and pressed it cold against my neck from the canteen he'd sloshed over it. "We're going to shade," he said. He didn't ask permission. I tried to stand and my legs gave the answer he expected. He didn't make a sound of effort when he lifted me, but his breath got honest by the time we reached the oak, and he set me down careful as china. Ants had their own business under the roots. He brushed them away with the back of his hand and set my hat right without a lecture. He poured the last of the canteen over my wrists and the tender inside of my elbows and the clap of my pulse eased. "Stay mad at me later," he said. "Breathe now." He left me for the count of 10, jogged to the truck, came back with the floor mat and slid it under my shoulder blades to lift me off the baking ground. I closed my eyes not to sleep, but to shut out the two bright facts of the sky, and counted his footfalls as he made 2 more trips, once to turn the truck doors wide to make a wind tunnel, once to bring the spare jug from behind the seat I'd forgotten I'd put there last fall. Cool returns like a slow apology. When the ringing left my ears, the first sound I recognized was his voice, steady and boring on purpose, telling me about the pump at the cottage that had decided it wanted a new gasket and how he'd argued it into another week with plumber's tape and restraint. I set the back of my hand on his forearm and he stopped talking like he'd been waiting for the cue. "I can walk," I said. "You can," he agreed. "Not yet." So we did not. We waited. When I sat up, the oak held its shade where it belonged, and the pasture put its lines back where a person could trust them. He offered his arm, and this time I took it, because pride is a poor salt lick. The truck's interior had shed the worst of the heat and forgave me the mistake of leaving it. He guided my feet in like I was dismounting, not failing, and shut the door without slam or ceremony. Back at the house, he steered me to the couch and fetched a bowl with ice and a towel without asking where anything lived. Maya appeared in the doorway 5 minutes later, hair stuck to her temple, breath short, phone in her fist. "I'm okay," I said. It was mostly true. She looked from me to Ryan and took in the wet shirt, the dirt on his forearms, the set of his mouth. She nodded once hard, as if answering a question she'd been asking herself in different words. "I'll make broth," she said, and went to the kitchen where pots know her. Later, when the day backed off enough to remember manners, we carried chairs onto the porch. The Firebird back under its tarp made a soft hill of red at the edge of the garage bay. The cottage roof caught the last of the light and flashed a small, stubborn promise where the shingles ran right. Cicadas struck up and the wind came back with its old name. Ryan sat in Daniel's chair without apology and kept his boots off the rail because he had been told enough times to learn a new habit. We watched the western sky burn down through its sequences. When the first star showed itself, he spoke without looking away. "The north fence has a weak section above the arroyo," he said. "I saw it yesterday." I sipped the peppermint tea Maya had doctored with too much honey on purpose. "You know where the cedar posts are," I said. He nodded. The porch boards took our weight and held. Somewhere down by the creek, a bullfrog started and another answered like the old music had learned a new verse. The windmill ticked slow and faithful, the way it always has when a day's work is over and whatever needs saying can stand to be said or left alone. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story. I'll see you next time as we continue exploring more journeys and lessons together.